Hello, everyone, and welcome to this. I can't even say this week because we don't do these weekly, but this episode of DVC Coffee Talk. I'm Pete Werner. If you didn't know that already, you know it now. Joined this week by two of my very good friends from DVCResaleMarket.com, from World of DVC, actually. Mr. Nick Cotton.
Hello, everybody.
And of course, senior editor for DVCFan.com and an awesome all around guy, Mr. Paul Krieger.
Cheers, everybody. Happy Saturday.
Yeah, we're all like, I don't know about you guys. I overslept this morning, so I've been racing around just trying to get ready to do this. So I have no idea what direction this is going to go in. And Paul, I assume we have someone monitoring chat for questions and things like that when we get ready?
Yes, I'm in the chat as well as my wife,
Awesome.
Amy. So we got
Hi,
plenty
Amy.
of people there.
All right. All right. So what I want to start off with is an issue that presented itself this week, and I want to talk a little bit about it, and I certainly want to give Nick a chance to talk to it about it. DVC Resale Market rolled out a new concierge program this past week, and and some of you didn't respond well to it. I think that's one way we can put this. And very graciously, listening to the audience, Nick has decided to temporarily suspend the $79 fee, the admin fee that was attached to that program, but continued giving people that program and that service. But we want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about it a little bit. And I want to talk about it from a somewhat more personal aspect. From the very first time I met Nick and his wife, Latoya, one of the things that really stood out to me was Nick's, and I say this in the best possible way, obsession with the guest experience, the customer experience that he provides. It was one of the reasons that my business partner, Sean Falk, and I decided to hang our real estate license with moving to Orlando with Nick's wife, Latoya, who is our broker. And that was before we did anything with DVC. This was, I met Nick and Latoya, got to know them, and from the first meeting felt comfortable enough to put this new project that we were working on in their hands. I don't know, and the people I do business with, and I think this is pretty consistent, people I do business with are good people. They're smart businessmen. They're talented. And they're good people. Those are the things I look for when I associate myself, my websites, my businesses with another person. So it bothered me. It bothered me to no end that people referred to this concierge program as a money grab. So let's define for a moment what a money grab is. A money grab is raising the price of something and providing nothing of value in return. That's not what this is. Nick had been talking for a while about wanting to find creative ways to up his game. Now, DVC Resale Market already had stellar reputation, incredible service, but in conversations between him and I, where there aren't microphones and cameras, repeatedly he would talk about the need, his desire to just make it even better. And as a former Disney cast member, that I guess that mentality, that's what I walked away with from the first meeting I had with him, was you could see the cast member in him, right? That mentality of service, that mentality of providing the best experience he possibly can, and find every way he could to do that. And as a former cast member, many of his friends are cast members, and many of those friends were affected by the layoffs and the furloughs. And he saw an opportunity to do this thing where he could up the service game with this concierge program, which he's going to talk about in a second. But he needed to hire people to do it. This is argument one against the money grab thing. He brought on 2 friends of his who were furloughed cast members to run this program, to champion this program. And if you watch the video announcement of this program, you met them. And I have to say this to people all the time on my side. When I have to advertise, whether it's Dreams or World of DVC or Magic Candle Company or whatever it is, these people that work for me and these people that work for Nick do not get paid in pixie dust. They get paid in cash, all right? They need money. And a business, sometimes when they expand or improve, has to pass some of that expense off to their clients. That's not a money grab. That's not a money grab. Setting up tents in Tomorrowland and charging an obscene amount of money for them. That's a money grab. That's a money grab. Remember the cabanas in Tomorrowland? We've had examples of that. This is not that. And I kept my mouth shut to a degree. It's not my favorite thing in the world to get into arguments with my audience. Other people, yes, but not you guys. I adore you guys. I really do. I don't get to do any of this without you. But this one you got wrong. I'm sorry, you got it wrong. And I'm going to let Nick talk a little bit about it, but I wanted to come up out front. And make that clear. And if I didn't truly feel that way, I think those of you who've watched me for however many years I've been doing this, you know that if I didn't feel that way, I wouldn't be saying this. I wouldn't be even doing this show right now if I didn't feel that way. And you might just want to consider that I have more information than you do. And I have some more experience with this particular issue and this particular man and that particular business from a perspective you don't have. And that if anything was going on, if I found it untoward or I found it unfair, or believe me, Nick will tell you, along with anyone else who's ever had a conversation with me, I'm not shy. I'm not shy about saying that. I thought what he was doing with this was wonderful. Not just in wanting to improve and enhance the customer experience, but in finding a really brilliant and creative way of doing that and giving jobs to 2 furloughed cast members, something many of us in this industry have been trying to do. So Nick, I want you to talk a little bit about it and a little bit more about the program and kind of give some more context to it.
No, I appreciate that, Pete. Certainly, I want to provide, a lot more context for folks. And from the feedback that we've received this week, I certainly want to address some questions I know that are already out there. And of course, if Pete and Paul are up for it, obviously we can open up the door for more questions. And of course, I'm here and I'm happy to answer those. But really, as Pete was talking, the premise of this was the core of this is all about guest service. It's all about really enhancing that experience. And where I see gaps, in the process is certainly, from the time that somebody got their contract submitted to the time it closed, how can we be better about this process? In my perspective, comes from first off, I was industrial engineer for Disney, right? So I'm always thinking process improvement. How can things be better? That's how I first even came to Disney Vacation Club. One of my first meetings was with a sales leader at the time, and he just looked at me and he says, "Nick, I'm not the most analytical guy, but I love my people. Can you please just make me a hero?" And that was one of my first experiences ever with Disney Vacation Club. I was an industrial engineer there to make the processes better. As a sales guide, one thing that I always loved when people could buy direct was that I could, start the tour, start meeting them at 8 a.m. By 10 a.m., they could be joining as our newest members of the Disney Vacation Club. And by 10:30, we were calling member services to book their first reservation. I mean, wow, how instant is that? Talk about instant gratification. Well, one of the biggest gaps I've always seen with resale is the lack of that. Now, granted, there's things you can't change, right? We can't change Disney's right of first refusal process. We can't change the time for them to get the estoppel to the title company, which is something the title company needs from Disney to prepare closing documents. However, when you look at a closing timeline, let's say, right now, an average, don't quote me on this, but this is probably roundabout pretty close, is about, let's say, 70 days. Well, of that, let's say the right of first refusal is taking 25, the estoppel is taking 5. We still have an opportunity in there. It's not completely in Disney's hands to shorten that process. So how can we do that? Certainly through the years, I believe we have an exceptional team of sales guys. Absolutely. I believe that we've also got a great team of quality assurance managers, and certainly, we've been filling in, all those milestone achievements that happen in the closing process to keep people updated throughout. However, one thing, I've never met a smart and talented salesperson that says, "Gee, I just love doing paperwork. I love doing back end work." Matter of fact, at Disney Direct, we didn't do we did very, very little of that. Any top sales organization's goal is, especially as it evolves, is you soar with your strengths. You get people doing what they are best skilled to do, and you don't try to fit a round peg in a square hole. That being said, do we have very conscientious people that have always chimed in and did everything they can? Absolutely, no doubt about that. But can we make this process more formalized? Can we have somebody that literally their sole accountability is to make sure that this closing process goes 100% smoothly? That's their sole purpose. Their purpose isn't to sell. Their purpose isn't to write up contracts. This is their sole purpose. So some of the benefits that I see of this is a couple different things. I mean, one is obviously, can we shrink that closing timeline that we have some control over? Meaning, by doing this, are we helping the title companies as better partners because they're not getting so many calls that bog down their system? Some of the feedback I heard was, well, I reach out to the title company all the time. And the title companies give us feedback that, well, that's fine, but it does bog down our system, because we're trying to close, we're trying to record deeds, et cetera. And that's a very delicate process where we have to get it 100% accurate. is there a way to is there a way to help us? We always get that question, right? So how can we always be better partners to them? From our our quality assurance managers that are entering the contracts, you hate for them to be interrupted. You want to reduce those errors as much as you possibly can. So from a pure efficiency standpoint, there's something there. Also, from a standpoint of there's two parties to every contract, and you may be somebody sitting there thinking, you know what, this is my 10th add-on. I got this process down pat. I'm extremely conscientious. As soon as I get my closing documents, I run to the notary if I'm lending, or I run to the bank to get my wire out. I do it within 24 hours. So I don't need any help. That may be the case for you. That no doubt we have some folks like that. However, doesn't mean the person on the other end of that transaction that you've had no exposure to is that way too. We could be dealing with a situation where maybe they're an international seller, and there's certainly right now more challenges than ever for some of our international guests with notary issues. There's we could run into issues with a POA. We could run into issues with somebody's just they may have bought 30 years ago, and they need the technology that people are buying with today is the technology they bought with. And so they need some more hand holding. And we want to make sure the process is seamless for everybody, regardless of their situation. And this helps both sides, we believe. Now, that's one element to it, is certainly efficiencies. So one of the things that, I'm tasking us to do that we had intentions of with going through this process is, we want to get data points on this. If, for example, this takes the closing time from 70 days to 68 days, well, that's an improvement. Is that something that people say, well, gosh, I would definitely get on board with paying, a premium fee for that? Probably not. What if we are able to get it from 70 days to 58 days? I think there's a point there where it starts to become a material improvement for a lot of our clients, and that's what we want to monitor. The other important thing we want to monitor is the guest experience through testimonials, through feedback, and actually even through this first week, we've really gotten some great feedback already right from the get-go, and this is people who just got the introductory call. We got one family, the Martinez family. As soon as they got the call from the concierge reps, they dropped everything they were doing. They both got on the call. They still had some follow-up questions. Certainly they can, call their sales agent again. We're not interrupting that relationship. But what we want the sales agent to be able to do now is further develop their relationship skills with the clients. We don't want them bogged down with, chasing after a POA or finding a notary in this local area. That's what, we want our concierge program to handle the legwork. We want our salespeople to layer on the additional relationship building. But I think the other part of the benefit here, especially when we're talking about newer clients, sometimes veteran clients. I mean, I know there's some veterans out there, that they know tons, and that's great. When you get that call from the concierge program, and they're going to ask, how do you want your communication with us? We're going to communicate with you on a near weekly basis. But that can be a text or email or call. So if you're like, hey, I've done this 10 times, I've really got this process down pat, just send me an email. That's fine. No big deal. So we're respectful of that. If we get somebody that's newer to it, then, they may want that phone call because they know they're going to still have, a lot of questions, and we don't want to take that opportunity away from them. We don't want to rush that process either. So now with that being said, I mean, when you talked about, new folks, what can we do to enhance that for them? Well, certainly we can, provide some more DVC 101 for them. We can also open up, for a lot of new people, even people that have added on before, they may not be aware of everything available to them in the secondary industry. For example, we get a lot of folks that, that aren't aware of the benefits they could achieve by renting out their points. For example, maybe we have somebody that's got, that bought a 200 point Polynesian contract. DVC rental stores renting those points out for $16 a point. You've got 200 bank from last year. By the way, that's $3,200 that you could get. We could set them up then with a warm transfer over to our sales and marketing director over there to handhold them through the rest of the process. Those are things that people may or may not know about. I mean, they may not know about, they say in the conversation that, we really love to cruise. Well, did you know about, the cruise swap program, where instead of using 500 points, you could use perhaps 300 points and take the same cruise? Well, let me tell you about that. So we want to also open up, that door more and more for people. And this really just comes from my experience with guests, and just seeing just some things that, wow, I can't believe. Sometimes I'm kind of shocked that they don't know some of these things yet. But then I look back to it, I was a guide for Disney Vacation Club on the cruise ship, and I remember I had a guest sit down with me, and they said, well, it was a member, I should say, and to be more precise, and they said, well, Nick, I'm never going to use my points for the cruise. It's better if you actually just rent those points and then just take take that cash and then go pay for the cruise. And I was like, and that really, I was a guide directly for Disney. And now this is some time ago. I mean, this, may have been, 10 years ago. But, I learned something, in that moment. And then I looked into it and I was like, wow. So, they're onto something here. Now that's evolved, more significantly today, where it's even a little bit more direct, in terms of the exchange. But, that's another element that we want to provide. How can we, we're not Disney, but we are representing a Disney product. And, we need to do the absolute best job, in my mind, of educating the public, making it as seamless as possible. I would love to have this process just like it is at Direct. I mean, you contact us at, if somebody's contacting us right now at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time, we get everything signed, and they're making a reservation later this afternoon. Obviously, that's going to take more of a mountain to ever get there, right? There's a lot more, and that would involve certainly a lot of changes with Disney to get there. But what I want to focus on right now is what we can control and what we can do better. And I do feel like there's still some opportunity there. Now, some people may kick back and I say, well, gosh, it sounds like if you, if you maybe, what if you just got the title companies to handle more of this? Well, there is that line, right, where you get into that gray area of who's what responsibility. But, one thing I want the audience to understand too is there's not one unicorn title company out there right now that can handle all of the things we do. For example, it really comes down to title insurance and volume. Like Magic Vacation Title, they don't do Hawaii, they can't do Hilton Head's attorney only closing state. They can't do Grand California. So there's certain ones they can't do for various reasons. But they are staffed for high volume. So there's reasons why we kind of have to use various title companies. So for us to go to all these different kind of title companies like First American and Magic Vacation Title and so on and so forth, and tell them, well, hey, we need a standardized process, and this is going to be what you're going to do. That's more of a mountain versus us saying, like, we'll take the responsibility on internally, and we'll make sure our clients have a consistent experience, from our standpoint.
And I just want to interject, Nick, that to just the whole point behind all of this is to find ways at every step of the process, right, to raise the game. And I am never, ever, ever going to criticize a company that is trying to do that. And that's especially true here. I do want to give Paul some time to come in too. He's been looking at a lot of this, and I want to get his take on things too. Oh, that's not Paul. There's Paul.
Hey, look at that. I'm pretty excited to see how this program can really affect the timeline of a resale purchase, because, a lot of people buy contracts and there are points that are sort of in this limbo area that the person may or may not get before closing. And so the ability to really speed up a contract in terms of the closing process is what I'm most interested in looking at in this is, if that can be accomplished, I think that's really going to be a game changer in the resale industry, because that is one of the biggest hurdles between resale and direct. We know that, direct, you can have points within 2 or 3 minutes. It's a little longer than that, but I mean, it's like same day points in your account. You can be booking something. Resale, obviously, due to right of first refusal and all of those steps, takes a lot longer to happen. But this concierge program, if it can successfully do that, I think it's going to be wonderful to both buyers and sellers in making this resale process quicker. And also, I'm a person that worries about things. I like to be on top of where's this, where's that, and knowing that someone is answering those questions day in and day out. And if I want to bug them every 5 minutes, I can bug them every 5 minutes. We probably shouldn't say that. You're going to have people just blowing up the concierge team, but you guys understand the point that I'm sort of getting at. Those people are dedicated to you, to answer your questions when and if you have them in the process, and they're looking after your contract. So I'm excited to see where it goes. The rollout was a little interesting, but I'm excited to focus on what this program can really do. And I think that Nick and the team at DVC Resale Market have an excellent plan going forward, and I'm excited to see it.
Me too. Let's kind of throw some other things in here. Paul, if any questions are coming in from the audience that we can.
There's not been anything people are just chatting about random things at the moment. But I think one question that's going to come up today is going to be sort of talking a little bit about this month's right of first refusal points or chart. I can't talk. I need more coffee. Right of first refusal contracts and how those went. I know, Nick, that was published, I believe it was midday yesterday. Any new trends that we're seeing related to right of first refusal?
Yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, guys, I can get into that as well as our average price blog that I just released about 30 minutes before we went live today. But two quick things. I think a question I did see, just to address that with the concierge program, and then I'll jump into that. But one was, why is there not an opt-out opportunity with the concierge program? Real big reason for that is simply the two things. We want a certain standard level of service. Meaning you can tell them, hey, I just want to get emails, whatever. I don't want to be called. That's fine. But we still have another seller on the other end of this. And we do want to strive to give a certain level of comfort to all of our parties to the contract. And also just from a pure system standpoint, it's not really, we've created a whole new database where basically the contracts go from one location to another location inside the concierge database. And then this is a way that we've established with our partners, being title company and Disney, to make this more seamless for them. So there's another element of it. So if we started saying, well, gosh, sorry, Disney or these title companies, these people, you're going to get a contact from this person instead of this person because they opted in or opted out, or, hey, you're contacting this seller and you're saying, sorry, the buyer opted out. We're not, we're not going to be doing this or whatever with your contract. That's something that's, I'm not sure we want to go there. I'm not saying that anything's not on the table. Maybe through a certain platform or system, we can have a workaround for these things. That being said, though, the more important thing is we have suspended right now the $79 fee. So regardless, if you wanted to opt in or opt out because of that fee, nobody, I think, would want to opt out because I want less service. I want less eyeballs watching my contract. I want less people following up with the seller on the other end, making sure that they perform. So I think, so importantly, the reason we pause the $79 is we really want to get the focus on the program, what we're accomplishing from a service standpoint. And I want people to, give it a try. That, there's no downside right now. There's absolutely no downside. You simply have more eyeballs watching your contract and helping you out than you would have ever had before. And if you're a buyer right now, you'll get a free backpack. So there's no downside with that. So I want to stress that. Also, one last thing on the topic of the concierge program. So people had feedback on, well, the name of the charge was concierge premium versus admin fee, those kind of things. And, for me, I've always just been bothered when I don't understand a cost. So, if somebody just says admin fee, I could be like, well, gosh, is that is that Disney doing something? Is that the title company doing something? Is that a paperwork shuffle fee? I mean, what is that? So really our effort was more better to define the cost. When we said concierge premium, we could, if it comes back, we call it concierge admin fee. But certainly, we wanted to, just better define it. So that was the reason for that. I want to get onto the right of first refusal
Hey, Nick,
and then the average.
Nick, before we jump a little bit further into that, there were a couple questions that popped up while you were talking, just to finish out this topic. A few listeners were concerned about the relationship with their sales agent, and whether or not this would impact that. Someone actually said their agent Andy Berry sent them a Christmas card, and they wondered if they were still going to get Christmas cards. So can you chime in on sort of what the role of those people are going to be as part of this concierge program?
Absolutely. Well, I don't want to put any more pressure on Andy Berry, but maybe this will allow him time to send you a 4th of July card too. So to answer this question, I mean, the point is to absolutely encourage more of this from our sales agents, because we want to take more burden off of them from this just running around kind of task, kind of things. So we want to free up more of Andy Berry's time to send you those Christmas cards.
Just let me jump in real quick. This is about enhancing, not replacing. This is about enhancing, not replacing. Of course, your sales reps are going to be, doing the things they've always done and more. This is about enhancing and taking that service to the next level. Very hard for sales reps to follow up at this level that Nick is talking about with this program, with the volume that they currently deal with. Very, very difficult. And as Nick was saying, this is really about enhancing that service, taking it to the next level, and also helping out the sales reps to be able to do things like that and do more of it. Am I right, Nick?
100%. And you just said, Pete, because we have a large volume. And so, the knock on us could be, because they have such large volume, they don't pay attention to me as much as an individual. And that is something that we absolutely will never do. And this is a giant step towards ensuring, I don't care how much volume we do, you are always going to be valued with us. And I have a program in place to ensure that no matter what.
All right, let's move on to this right of first refusal report that just went up. Very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Nick, I want you to talk a little bit about it, but Bay Lake Tower, man, they're buying back a lot of Bay Lake Tower.
They are, and here's what else is interesting and almost like a little bit of a bigger picture of things. And this kind of could go into a entirely different topic, but maybe one for a show. But one thing that's interesting this year is that their buyback rate is a very solid, I would call it stout 10%. What's interesting to me about that, if you look at that from years past, that's not extraordinarily stronger percentage-wise of buybacks than other years. However, when you look at DVC and what they're selling, pre-pandemic goals to post-pandemic goals, it's a very different number. And so when I see this amount of buybacks and the volume that they're buying and the volume that we're selling, it tells me that their sales mix has had to change. There's no doubt about it. That, and I think it's a symptom of probably them going to more of a virtual world, meaning that, their mix of sales is very, very likely, very reasonably going to be more over the phone right now than it would have been prior. I mean, for example, the cruise channel, I don't have exact numbers on it, but let's say it was doing 70 to 100 million in sales. Well, it's not doing that right now. Obviously, there's no cruises out. Hopefully very soon, but obviously not right now. You also look at, the land situation, and they haven't gone very much back to a very kind of traditional timeshare model of we're going to sit with you for 60 to 90 minutes. It's been much more of a situation where we're getting people's contact information and we're doing a lot of the follow-up over the phone. So that puts you in more of a virtual world. In more of the virtual world, you do see people who are more researched because they have the opportunity to do that, additional research. And so they may ask for more of these properties instead of just, hey, I come on tour or I meet you on the cruise ship. I'm not really aware of all the different resorts. I'm on vacation. Right now you're telling me all about, Riviera and how, and how great it is. And it is great. And so I naturally just kind of lean towards purchasing that. Well, when you get folks in more of a environment where they're back at home, they get on the internet, obviously, and they're looking at, wow, oh, okay, look at Bay Lake. I can walk to Magic Kingdom from there. What about Old Key West? What about Boardwalk? It's right there next to, Epcot. So, I know that, naturally, and from my experience there and also being in this world, you're just going to get more and more of those questions. So it's interesting to me also to see that certainly we have a little bit of a mix shift that Direct must be doing when I see this kind of buyback volume continuing in the current state of affairs that we're in.
Least likely to get bought back.
Least likely is Alani. I would say that is probably historically your safest bet. I mean, we've never had a non-subsidized Alani contract bought back in the history of DVC resale market. We've had just a couple of subsidized Alani contracts bought back. So that is one where, we give people that 99.9% safe zone.
And of the Walt Disney World properties, what would you say best bet to avoid buyback?
I would say right now, Boulder Ridge, Copper Creek, Riviera. Typically, whatever is newer is less likely to be bought back, number one. And a big part of that is Disney already has that inventory, right? Disney already has plenty of Riviera inventory. They probably still have a little bit of a higher percentage of Copper Creek inventory. Another thing that happens with newer properties as well is that when they first get introduced to the market, keep in mind about 80 to 90% of people that purchase direct through Disney do finance. And many of them that finance do the minimum down of 10%. So when a property is newer, meaning it's first, like let's say, maybe 2 to 3 years of entering the resale market from when Disney started selling it, typically those prices sometimes have to be listed at certain levels to even allow the seller to be able to sell it, because that's what they need to cover their loan so they can even, achieve selling it. So that being said, Disney, for various reasons, price, but also the inventory they already have on hand, are less likely to buy those back. I would say the ones that we really put big warnings on right now, like you mentioned, Bay Lake Tower, Old Key West, they're both near 30% buyback rates right now. So you really want to be careful with those. Old Key West historically always has one of the highest percentages of buybacks. And one of the things to keep in mind with Old Key West, and why that may always be the case, is when Disney buys back a 2042 deed, keep in mind, once they buy that back, it automatically is a 2057 deed when they resell it. So they get that automatic perceived value of those 15 additional years.
What I love about the chart that you guys put out, is you're showing at what price point things are getting bought back. And that's really useful when trying to figure out, like, if you want to make a counter offer on a resale, kind of what's gonna work. So like Saratoga Springs in April, I'm guessing on average, highest buyback price per point by resort from April of 2020 to April 21 is this particular chart. So April 2021, $100 a point seemed to be the tipping point for Saratoga. Am I correct in how I'm reading this?
That's exactly right. For the month of April, the highest was 100. If you look at the rolling year, it's 103. And so this is just a couple of very important data points when somebody asks us, well, what's my risk? Well, let's go to the highest they've done last month. Let's also look at the highest in the rolling year, which shows, just kind of the most recent trend. And really that's where the conversation starts. And then after, when you give people that data, it's really then about your risk tolerance.
So Paul, what about you? You must have some take on this.
So I'm very interested in continuing to watch what sort of DVC's direct mindset is with some of these buybacks. We continue to see them doing these open houses at all of the DVC resorts. So it definitely seems like they're taking this approach of, we're just going to sell you whatever you want at this point, whether it be Bay Lake, whether it be Riviera. There's still a Riviera push out there, and obviously the incentives are huge to buy Riviera over the other properties. But they are continuing, as we emerge from this pandemic, to sort of say, let's just give consumers what they want. And along that lines, there's been a question raised, and I'll throw this to Nick, but as resale prices are continuing to creep up there a little bit, so there's sort of this question of, when might we see direct prices increase as a result of that? Because the more that resale price creeps up towards direct, then there comes into those questions of, well, if I can get my points quicker through direct, what do I do? But I think historically we've seen sort of direct prices sort of move around as we see changes in the resale market. Is that correct, Nick?
Yeah, and I don't know if they necessarily will react to, necessarily resale prices. I think they certainly have their own pro formas and their own targets. Could it be a bullet point for them for consideration? Possibly. I know it wouldn't be certainly the main driver, but to Paul's point, it is interesting what we're seeing right now. As resale prices obviously have risen, where is that in relation to direct prices? And so, the blog I just published this morning on the average prices, dives into that a little bit. Now they did, just to clarify, back just a few months ago, they did raise prices on a handful of sold out properties. And so it was kind of like about a third of their properties had a price increase. So there was that, not as significant as we've seen, sometimes in the past, of course. So when we talk about, what's the gap look like right now? Well, typically we're always running a gap of about 30 to 40% off when you compare resale to direct. Now, if we were a year ago, it was about on that 40% mark. When I look at I'm just going to give you an average of all the different 15 properties there for DVC. And when I look at the same average of what the average selling prices are on the resale market. So when we look at that today, though, to Paul's point, we're looking at a mark that's closer to the 30% gap. So, a couple of the reasons for, why we're seeing this, certainly in the resale world, is we are seeing an incredibly strong demand right now. I mean, really, you could probably trace it back to late last year. Starting around December and going into now, we've seen just a surge in demand. Now, reasons for that, obviously, I think, we're all living in this world together. We're all going through a lot of this stuff together with the pandemic. And so I think we can, you kind of start to figure out, okay, there's some logic there, right? Because not everybody was financially impacted from the pandemic, and some people were able to, but they weren't able to vacation last year. So you got some extra vacation discretionary income saved up. Now you got some stimulus money coming out as well. So we are feeling, I think, a surge from just pocketbooks maybe being a little bit fatter for folks who, through those various reasons. But also, I think there's an emotional element to it. When we're talking to a lot of our, lot of guests, a lot of members right now, the pandemic also gave people time for reflection and, what's important. And I think we hear a lot is time with the family, but quality family time, not just sitting around the house. We're ready to get out of the house, but, we want to be back on vacation. We want to be enjoying that time together. And for Disney fans, like my wife and I, that means Disney vacations. I know for us, we feel like with our kids, we have a 3 and 7-year-old. And we feel like we lost a year of opportunities of making vacation memories with them. And as a parent, that can be very meaningful because you only have so many years. I think I saw a statistic where it said, over 50% of the time that you'll ever have with your child is before the age of 12. After that, you're kind of thinking, well, that doesn't make, gosh, how's that? But then you think about it, after the age of 12, well, pretty soon they want to do stuff with their friends. And then they go off to college and then they're starting their own life. And then you're like, oh my God. So that kind of makes sense. And it's kind of scary at the same time. So I know for us, I mean, we're chomping at the bit to get on the inaugural, Wish. That's like, that's like goal number one in our house right now for vacations. But so I think there is an element of that, people want to get out. So I think you're seeing that surge with demand. The supply has been pretty consistent. It hasn't really tailed off. It's just that this surge in demand has had more contracts going out than have had coming in. And so naturally, what's going to happen is that inventory shrinks, as prices will naturally go up. And we've had sellers dictating to us, sometimes the price are like, oh no, I see that you barely have any inventory. I don't want to list it, there. I want to list it here. It's and I'll tell you, we're not the only industry like this. We even have a boat we bought a few years back, and the company Regal, just a little cruiser boat, and they're like, oh gosh, we can actually sell your boat now used for more than you bought it for 3 years ago. I think it's and that's part of the supply chain issue, I think, on some of the ends, on some of those ends, when we look at some of the things going on in housing and boats and all that kind of stuff. But also there's obviously a pent up demand for a lot of these things too. And now as we talk about the gap, going back to that though real quick, there is going to be a point, obviously Disney sets the ceiling for where resale prices can be, right? You can only get so close, and people are like, yeah, I'm just going to buy direct, of course, because, there's no restrictions. I get my points right away, etc. So I think now that tolerance of that gap maybe tightened a little bit, just because some of the things that I would have gotten before aren't there right now, like member events, discounts on annual passes, things like that. But obviously, at some point, we're going to hit the mark in resale where you'll have some buyers start to say, you know what, I think I'm going to go direct instead of resale. And then I think you'll see, obviously, prices probably, naturally level out at that point.
All right, let's get some questions from chat. I know, Paul, you're monitoring that. You seen anything come in?
Yeah, well, and I just wanted to chime in on Nick's last point there. Jennifer McWilliams over in the chat has sort of asked the question of how long can DVC get away with no real perks? And Nick sort of brought that up there at the end. That historically, we've talked about this many times, that is one of the driving factors of buying direct, is that there used to be all of these perks. And the most attractive of those was annual pass sales, which we still know nothing about. Yes, they're allowing current annual pass members to renew their passes if you're a DVC member. But outside of that, there's no new sales going on. So people that used to buy for that very reason, or for all of the other special events, that was one of the big attractive features. And without that, I think direct sales are suffering a little bit because that's the value you get with a direct contract.
Are you surprised that they haven't come up with alternatives in the last year as far as direct perks are concerned?
I'm extremely surprised that they haven't gotten more creative with some of the things that they're offering, or even offering virtual events or special things for DVC members. Heck, here's a simple one. Give DVC members, when they sign up for DVC, a free year of Disney Plus. I mean, it's such a small perk, but it ropes them into that program, or ropes them into that streaming service if they're not already a member, and then you're hooked for life. I mean, I know I'm going to be paying for that forever now. But I'm surprised that they just haven't tried to get creative with how do we virtually connect with our members? How do we give them a little bit more to entice sales in that manner? I mean, they've got this broad spectrum of things that they can offer.
He did that video a few months ago with Kayla Settle from The Greatest Showman, which I personally thought was very good, but I would have thought at this point, if for no other reason than just to support their direct sales channel, they would have gotten creative with coming up with something to replace. Obviously, look, you're not going to be able to replace Moonlight Magic with a virtual event, okay? You're not. But I would have thought they would have come up with something. And I think it just, for me, is more evidence that what we're dealing with in terms of DVC's upper level management let's just say they're not creative when it comes to doing things that enhance the value. They're very creative at screwing things up. They're very creative at that. If creativity, if not not being transparent about changes is creative, they're enormously creative. They're the Van Gogh of timeshares. But that's, I don't know. I just, as we're having this conversation, that's kind of what's coming into my head. Like, why haven't they done anything? Really?
So to that point, let's talk about the one thing that they recently did do, which was they announced that the second sailing ever on the Disney Wish is going to be a DVC cruise. Now, for those of you familiar with DVC member cruises, this is not being pegged as a member cruise. This is basically being called a DVC sailing, which you're just exchanging words at that point to confuse people. But the big thing that came out with this was that at least one person booking this had to book the reservation on points. Historically, for a member cruise, that was you were allowed to book points or cash. But here they're trying to eat up some points in the system for some reason or another. I shared my thoughts in a detailed post over on DVC Fan on Tuesday, basically saying that it's a waste of your points. But I'm curious as to what you two think about this offering of the second ever sailing on the Wish.
Now, is this? I keep getting confused. Is this have they chartered this sailing? I mean, is it all DVC or is it just part DVC?
I know that it's not listed, I believe, on any of the announced cruises that were released with the big announcements.
Do they really think they are going to fill this ship with direct points? I don't know. Nick, like, you used to work for these people.
Yeah. I'll say a few things. I mean, getting to the topic of doing things. Yeah, I think we always hope for more. I know one thing that, they're always going to have some difficulty with, and I'm just saying this from being, on the inside for many years, is that it's such a large organization. And certainly when you get hit with a curveball and, you are so big, you lack the agility to react, as quickly as you probably would like to. So I know that's a part of it. Speaking of things that they have done, obviously to Paul's point with the Wish, I think with this one, so it's not. I get the impression the reason why they're not defining it as a member cruise, they're not going to have. And I've been on several member cruises. They're not going to, have the normal shows, the Broadway, folks, those kind of things that they would normally do. They do a lot of extra shows, like with Don Ducky Williams on there, various Disney artists, etc. So I get the impression it's going to be a regular sailing, but the special part of it is you will be on the second ever cruise of the Disney Wish, and it's kind of for them it's probably knocking out two birds with one stone. You get to say, hey, we are doing this for our members. We're reserving this second sailing just for you guys, and to Paul's point, they're going to eat up some points that right now, obviously, as you can imagine, there is a lot of points out there because Disney World was shut down for several months for resorts. Disneyland was shut down for over a year with the points. Lonnie, you go on and so forth, where these points weren't able to be used. So it will allow them to do that. I mean, the question is from Pete, will the whole ship be full of points? It's kind of hard to say. I mean, right now there's a huge supply of it. People are anxious to get out. People are super excited about, the Wish, me being one of them. So I wouldn't be shocked if it happens. Honestly, I would not be shocked if they're able to fill it up.
But isn't this also a little bit of an example of your chickens coming home to roost? They could, if they really wanted to burn points. I mean, really burn points. Open this up to resale as well. Don't limit it just to direct. Open it up to resale. You want points are points. You want to burn points, open it up to resale. So this is, in a way, a little bit of their chickens coming home to roost, isn't it?
Well, I could get behind on the on opening up resale points for sure. I think that would be great. And now you could look at it on the flip side, I guess, and they could say, hey, this is a nice this is, a differentiator for us if you buy direct. But to your point, if you're wanting to help, obviously, with supply issues, then this open up to retail would certainly help.
And this is my point too about this myopic, and this is common among Disney management, seen it for years in all branches of the company. This myopic view that they take of things, in this case, creating a class system between owners who purchase direct and owners who purchase resale. They create these myopic programs. They install these rules, and now you got to figure at least somebody in the executive suite over there is going, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have done that. You got to figure that if you want to burn points, I have no idea how many points are out there that were purchased direct versus purchased resale, but I have to imagine that every year that number of resale points in the system goes up and up and up. And it probably goes up at a much higher clip than direct points go. But I don't know that for a fact. That's just me spitballing here. But go ahead, Paul.
Well, and the only thing I'm going to say to your guys' points is that, yes, this removes points from DVC members, but those are turning into points for DVC. I mean, they're not just throwing them away in the trash can somewhere. They're going to use those then to turn those rooms into cash rooms, which is going to be rooms that are removed from inventory. So I have trouble with how this helps the problem other than just giving DVC more money, because I don't see how it helps the availability issue that we have here when DVCs, I mean, they're just going to use those points to book cash rooms.
Well, I think I think in every division of Disney, they're all showing massive losses, and that's understandable, and they all have the cover of the pandemic to explain it, and it's all legitimate. I'm not saying that's not legitimate. At some point, one of two things. One, that excuse is no longer going to be there, and they have to figure out how they're going to show growth. Number two, if you are a aggressive career person running a division of Disney, this is an opportunity to show that you can make money under these circumstances. That's certainly going to get the attention of your bosses, right? Now, obviously, DVC has been as impacted by, they make their money from the direct sales, and for a number of months, their parks were closed. They weren't able to do that. Even now, there are limits on these tours and, their ability to interact directly with people to sell these. So they've got to do something to make money. But I'm interested to see when bookings open up for the Wish in a few weeks. I want to see if, non-DVC people are able to book that second sailing. I know that it's not listed right now, but I want to see. If if any part of that opens up for cash. I just have a hard time believing that they're going to fill the ship with direct points. I could be absolutely wrong. Obviously, they do really well with these member cruises. I think it's interesting they're not calling this a member cruise, as you pointed out. But we'll find out. We'll have more to talk about. What else coming in from chat, Paul? I take a few more before we have to wrap.
Mark Mather, when do you guys think that the 50% borrowed points restriction will be lifted?
I think the better question is, when are they going to fix their damn reservation system so I don't have to call in if I'm using resale points that I'm borrowing from the next use here? I've been hearing for almost a year now. Oh, yeah, we're working on it. what, like one line of code a day? I mean, what the hell? And that's why I don't believe, because it's been going on for a year now. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you own resale points and you want to book a reservation and you're going to borrow points for the next use year, you can't do it online. You have to call them. And sometimes the wait time to get through to member services can be hours because they're grossly understaffed. And we've been hearing, yes, we're working on it. And I don't think they are. I think this is intentional. I think it is, for whatever reason. I don't know why. I have no evidence to support that. I'm just saying that if this was simply a website issue, if there was simply a coding issue that was, causing an error when trying to do this particular thing, I have to believe that Disney has the expertise in-house to have fixed this in less than a year. Yet it's not fixed. So with every day that goes by that this continues to happen, it doesn't look to me like it just doesn't look to me like it's, oh yeah, we have an issue with our website. No, you have an issue with your management. And I really hope this is not a furtherance of the treat resale like second-class citizens. I really hope that's not what this is. But I really can't say with any certainty that it's not. Personally. Every time I've had to do it, where I've had to borrow points, it is maddening. It is absolutely maddening. So we're just going to sit here and stare at each other.
And Pete, I can certainly understand your frustration there 100%. I think it's way beyond the time, the reasonable expectations to have that fixed. In terms of intentions, I can't speak to that, whether this is an intentional thing or it really just is genuinely a system problem. From my experience, Disney is an amazing theming family entertainment company. IT has never been one of their strongest suits. I know from working a little bit on the industrial engineering side for member services long time ago. I mean, certainly there has always been a very, very strong push to make things more online because that lowers their labor cost, increases their customer satisfaction, etc. Now, you got the resale element in here, obviously, that's a fly in the ointment, but I'm not sure, I'm not sure on the intentions there, but I do 100% agree with you there on the frustration. I think it's gone, like I said, way beyond a reasonable time to get this addressed.
Yep. What else, Paul? What else is coming in?
We had a question following up from our discussion on a show a week or so ago about what we're dubbing Pointsgate, related to the 2022 point charts. As far as I'm concerned, I've been following that thread over on Disboards pretty closely, and also just looking on the point charts section of the Disney Vacation Club website. We've not heard any other news about that yet. The last place that it was left was that we thought that they were working on some revised point charts that might be released in several weeks to a month. So we're still sort of looking on that. And I also just emphasize that, we're going off of what is a large thread over on Disboards here for that information. I personally trust a lot of the people reporting that information. There's been lots of people that have contacted Disney Vacation Club, spoken with managers and higher ups within the organization to come up with this info. So I do believe something's going to happen, but we are still putting it in that rumor mill because who knows at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, it better turn out to be right, Paul. You're in trouble. You're in trouble. All right, we'll take one more and then we gotta wrap up.
A couple people asking about the new. We haven't really talked about it on a show or anything yet. Not necessarily DVC related, but a little bit. The new Boo Bash, which is going to replace Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party next year. The question that's sort of DVC related is whether or not we're going to see DVC members be able to get into this event early. Again, that's a very simple perk that I would think that they should offer to encourage sales, since they'll have a lot of DVC members on property. But what's everyone's take on the new Boo Bash party?
I am really happy that they're doing something, and they're doing something. They're trying to change this up with an eye toward where we are right now and being responsible. It's one of the things I've really had to, I have to applaud Disney on how they've handled throughout this entire cluster that we've gone through the last year. As far as whether or not there'll be, DVC perks attached to it, normally I would say, of course, but again, we're talking about the Van Gogh of the timeshare business. So who knows? Who knows? I hope they have enough foresight. They had enough foresight to inject something like that into that process when that was being planned. But honestly, with this group running DVC, I think it's 6-5 in Pick'em. To be honest, I don't know, Nick. You may have a different view of that.
Well, I will say I am extremely happy that we know we are doing something for Halloween. And I will also say, in regards to it, I think that would be great if they did that, obviously, for DVC members. That's an easy one. It also just establishes, I think, how special the event is and the urgency when you start like they're doing for the Wish. This group can book on this day, this group can book on this day. It starts to kind of give you that feeling of like, wow, this is special, and I hope I'm early on, and it's an easy one for them to do with this event. So I would hope something like that would be in consideration. The other thing I will say, from going to the Mickey's Not So Scary for many years, is I hope the capacity is, just makes you also feel special. I felt in the last few years on it, to me, it has gotten much busier. And, if I'm doing a separate ticketed event, I do want to enjoy a little bit more of that elbow room, versus just a normal day capacity. So I hope that that's something, taken into consideration, as well, and maybe reevaluated a little bit from where it was, previously.
I want to see what they're going to do with capacity, obviously, because that's always been a complaint about Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, especially in the years prior to 2020, how absurdly crowded those parties were getting. And obviously they're not going to be able to do that. So the real question becomes, like, what is this going to look like? We know they're going to push to expand capacity before the 50th anniversary in October. They're going to have to. And hopefully, we're seeing signs now that, that may be very responsible and very doable. We're hearing, potential reports that it could be midsummer for a return to cruising out of U.S. ports. And I'm going to talk about this in the Tuesday show, but let me get it out now before we wrap. Yes, the announcement of the Wave undergoing a major refurbishment this summer. And everybody, I was blown up on Facebook because people know that's one of my favorite restaurants. Let me just make something clear. This is not going to be an Incredibles-themed restaurant. Those reports are inaccurate. Inaccurate. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. But those reports are inaccurate. What I do hope is that the same team is kept in place. The executive chef who turned that restaurant around and made it phenomenal. And so help me God, if they take bacon and eggs off the menu, there will be blood. There will be blood, is all I can say. But I can't imagine the popularity of that dish in particular and how many people it's drawn into that restaurant. You're welcome. I couldn't imagine them taking that off the menu. But that's like my big thing right now. Like the Halloween party, that's nice. What, they're closing the wave? So I'm kind of focused on that at the moment. So, all right, we got to wrap up, folks. Thanks for being with us this morning. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you again the next time we decide to do Coffee Talk. Have a great week, folks.